Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to day 2 of the Mayday Masterclass, where I, Allison, am sharing with you a lot of tips for helping you regulate your nervous system using different types of herbs and flower essences. So today I've brought in an actual bouquet for our plant of the day, which is the daffodil, who has a message for us. And I couldn't resist picking some of these beautiful crab apple blossoms. And this is a little epimedium in here. And so why not adorn myself with some crab apple? Now, crab apple is an important flower essence. We won't be talking about it in this program, but crab apple is, I can see the crab apple trees straight out my window from where I'm sitting right here. And I so look forward to when they bloom every year. After all, it is May, and May flowers, the blooming cherry trees and apple trees, are what always reminds me of May. Do you have a favorite flower that you look forward to in the springtime? So welcome, everyone. And if you're watching live, feel free to say hello in the comments. If you're watching the replay, you can just put a comment down below. So today we're going to talk a little bit about this idea of perception and how we look at the world around us. And then I'm going to share, yesterday we talked about some herbs that are nerve tonics. In other words, they are nourishing and something we can take all the time just to sort of keep our nervous system in a good state of health. But sometimes we just need something stronger that can help us relax in the moment. And so I'll be sharing with you some of the types of plants which we refer to as nerve sedatives. And today, within our head, heart, and hands model that I talked about yesterday, we'll be focusing kind of on the head, meaning our thoughts and the way we think about things and what goes on in our brain in the way that we're interpreting the world around us. So yesterday I went really long, and when I went back to review it, I realized I was talking really slowly. So I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit today. And so we should be about 45 minutes for this particular session. Now, I want to start with a quote for you. And since we're talking about the head today and the thoughts that we have, some of those thoughts that don't do us any good at all are when we spend a lot of time worrying. Worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it never gets you anywhere. So let's be thinking about how are we worrying about things, and how might we be able to change our perception of things so that perhaps we don't have to worry about them as much as we thought. So first, I want to share with you our cards for today and our message. As I said, daffodil is our plant of the day, and it's perfect as usual because the word for daffodil is perception. I tell you, I choose these cards from a intuitively. And when this showed up on day 2, I'm like, of course, there it is, daffodil. And I brought a few daffodils in from my yard. All my yellow ones are done. I have some of these white ones, and I love these little miniature ones here that have the deep, whatever you call this part in here, calyx or something like that. And so I'll have a little decoration for today's session. Now, yesterday, I gave you 2 cards, when the first one, which was yarrow, and yarrow always helps us with our boundaries. And a lot of times when we feel really stressed, it's because we haven't paid good attention to our boundaries. And these boundaries means not just what we're letting in, but it also means what are we allowing out? What are we letting go out? How are we letting our energy escape? And how are we using our energy in a way that's maybe really draining us? Because one of the important aspects is not just, we have a lot of different aspects of our health, and one of them includes our sort of vital life force. And when we don't have boundaries, that gets drained. And then yesterday we had nettle transformation, and transformation is something that we're always looking forward to. It's always happening. Things are always changing. How can we kind of wake up and participate in our own transformation? Nettle wakes us up and helps us pay attention. So today's card for day 2 is daffodil, and the word again is perception. And the words on the card say this: these magnificent heralds of spring are literally trumpeting the joy and freedom of learning to be yourself. Daffodil wants you to see the light, to perceive the beauty and perfection and wholeness that is you, just as you are. It is time to release any self-doubt and revel in the freedom and weightlessness of endless possibilities. And when we start to examine the way that we're perceiving things, we can realize that a lot of the ways that we're interpreting what's going on around us, it doesn't have to be that way. And we can begin to make just slight shifts in once we understand kind of the why do I perceive something in a certain way. So let me see here. Where's my little clicker? There it is. So before we jump in, though, I want to do a quick day 1 recap. And so yesterday we talked about how we need this holistic view, the head, heart, and hands. And today I want to make sure and add in our vital life force. You could even call this your spirit, whatever it is that brings you in, that animates you and enlivens you. And that is a really important piece to look at in a holistic view. We also talked about how this fight or flight stress response, we actually need that. We need to be able to have that if an emergency situation comes up. But we should be in rest mode about 80% of the time. So if you're curious about that, take some time to think about, stop yourself throughout the day. How am I feeling right now? Am I feeling in a tense mode, or am I feeling more relaxed? And just start to be aware what situations put you into that more stressed or fight or flight type of mode. The other thing is, if we're in this level, if we're not at 80% of rest and relaxation, and we're elevated stress all the time, sometimes called chronic stress, we have to realize that this is an interplay between what we believe, what we perceive, and the environment, and kind of what we're taking in. And it all is so intricately interwoven. And then we talked about how, our world is not meant for so much overstimulation. And in particular, so much noise. There's so much noise going on all the time. A plane just flew overhead and I could hear it. And we just, especially with all of our devices that are going all the time. I have 2 kids. They are constantly on their devices. And so we're bringing all of this input into a body and our poor ears, which are just not designed for this type of overstimulation. So it's really important to recognize that and not to feel like, what's wrong with me? Why am I so stressed all the time? It just is kind of the way that our lifestyle is. But we can change our lifestyle. And yesterday we talked about ways that we can change our environment to make it more more soothing for us. So, I see Angela says hello in the comments. Those daffodils are beautiful. I found some lilacs today. Oh, love lilac. Okay, I might have to change my favorite springtime plant from the crab apples to lilacs. Oh, I love lilacs so much. So lucky you, lilacs won't be blooming here. In fact, you can see I'm wearing a sweater. It's like still chilly here in New Hampshire. We won't have lilacs for probably a couple more weeks. So enjoy them. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this word stress. Okay. What does that actually mean? And one important thing to realize is that stress, here's a definition by this person, Hans Sale. I'm not sure exactly how you say his last name, who was a researcher that first began talking about stress in the 1930s. And he's passed away now, but he's considered sort of the father of modern stress research. And one of the things he points out is a lot of things that stress isn't. It isn't, it isn't what we think of it as. Oh, this is this pressure on me. These are these things. Stress itself is a non-specific response of the body to any demand, whether it's a pleasant or unpleasant condition. So we tend to think of stress as something negative, but the truth is that there are lots of things that are stressful that are positive things. Have you ever gotten married? Planning for a wedding is stressful, even though it's something that we want to do. Enjoying the holidays with your family, that can be stressful because there's just a lot of things going on that we're not used to. So the habit that we've gotten into is of using the definition of stress as being a negative thing. But tension is something that we need to hold our body together, right? So tension, we need moments of tension, but then again, we need moments of relaxation. So we have to realize that stress isn't just a negative thing, and this is where our perception and our sort of perspective on things can come in and can really help us. But before we go on, I want to ask you a question and show you this really cool picture. And that is, have you ever worn a shoe like this before? Do you have shoes like this? Maybe you don't, but you've seen these before, right? So you might have one, you might not. And if you don't, well, you might have eaten an apple like this, right? So this is pretty common. It's probably a Red Delicious or something like that. And so how many of you think that you've either worn shoes, seen shoes, or eaten an apple like this before? If you said, yeah, I have, sure I have, then I want to tell you that, you know what? You haven't. I bet you haven't, because that shoe is not a shoe. That shoe is a cake. The first time I saw this, I was absolutely amazed. And this is not the only piece of artwork that this woman does. But what's important, and here is the apple cut open, revealing the fact that it's actually a cake. And so this woman does these, what's called hyper realistic cake decorating, and she's just amazing. But what's so interesting about this is when you were looking at that apple there, oh yeah, your perception of what that was an apple. You had no doubt in your mind that this was an apple. And even when you saw these pictures here, when we see these pictures, our brain cannot immediately readjust to believing that that is a cake. And so this is just because we have, have certain sets of experience and knowledge, things we grew up with, the way that we perceive things, and that made sense to us. But now, sometimes the way that we look at things isn't exactly how it is. So I want to explore this a little further with this picture here. This idea of how we perceive things, how we see the world around us. And so my question is, how would you respond to this situation? You're walking down the sidewalk and there's 5 dogs, there's one way in the background, are running towards you. Now, if you are a huge dog aficionado, if that's a word, you would be like, "Oh, puppies!" and running towards them with open arms. But for myself, where I grew up, I lived at the end of a dead-end road, and we had to walk, I don't know how far it was, half a mile or something like that, up the road to get to the bus stop. And there was 2 dogs that lived right at the house where we stood for the bus stop, 2 big German shepherds, and there was another house I had to walk by every single day to get to the bus stop. And in this house was this really scary dog. A really scary, like a attack dog, German shepherd, whose name was Susie. This dog's personality was not Susie. And there were times when we would be walking up past this house, and we would be like, literally, I'm practically in the drainage ditch on the other side, trying to get as far away as possible from this driveway in case Susie had gotten off her leash, or they were on their way out to the car or into the backyard. And because of that experience, because I didn't have a dog, I didn't grow up with dogs, I created an incredible fear of dogs. This had been my experience as a little kid, having to walk past this potentially, I mean, this dog would come out baring its teeth and barking as loud as possible. It was terrifying. And so for me, this picture right here would be terrifying, to see a bunch of dogs running towards me. Now, as an adult, I've met many incredibly nice dogs. I've also been bitten by a dog. So when I think of dogs, I'm neutral. So what is your perception of this situation? How would you respond to this if you saw dogs coming? And this is just one of so many different scenarios that happen minute after minute in our life. We have to perceive and interpret all day long. But sometimes, I like this quote here. This person is kind of like a motivational speaker. It says, sometimes letting go of things we're worrying about, the way we see things, is simply changing the labels you place on an event, looking at the same event with fresh eyes. And I really like that, because I thought, okay, I can look back on that event and this dog and realize that, wow, that is not every single dog. And I do have many dogs that I learned to love later on in my life. So, but without being aware of how much our beliefs and our perceptions are affecting us, we're not going to understand that it's possible to change the way that we look at things. So let me see here. Let's get into, so knowing that, let's talk a little bit about how we perceive things. And that's, of course, through our senses. Now, they're the interface between the world and ourselves, and they are neutral. They don't have opinions about what's going on out in the world. They take in signals called stimuli, send it to the brain, and that's 80% of what the nervous system does, is sending information to the brain from the body. The body interprets it and sorts it out, and then communicates back to the body something that it needs to do, triggering an action, telling us to take action. But what happens is, I also want to share an analogy with you. A lot of you may have on your house these kinds of motion sensor lights. And so the motion sensor light is a lot like our senses, right? It's just sitting there waiting for something to happen. When it detects a motion, It goes to the light's little brain there, and the brain says, "Oh, turn on," because you saw something happening. You saw some motion going on. And then after the motion leaves, whatever, in the middle of the night, a skunk walks by or something like that, then the light says, "Oh, nothing's happening. I'm going to turn off again." Now, I remember this past winter, we had a big snowstorm and it was very windy, and the snow was blowing past the motion sensor light all night long, and it kept coming on, and then it would go off and then it would come on, and it was just kind of going crazy. And this is kind of what happens to a lot of us when we have too much information overload coming in. Our light is like, "Oh, there's something happening." And it keeps going on, and it never fully shuts off. And, by morning, phew, the light's finally off because it's no longer sensing things. But this is why it's so important to make sure that our environment is clear so that our senses aren't trying to bring in so much information at the same time. So let me know in the chat if this is making sense to you. And I am so fascinated by the way the body works that I love all this stuff. And I could go on for hours about the way I'm barely touching the surface of how the nervous system works and all of our beliefs and perceptions and all of those things during this 3-day class. But it's so important for me to share these with you so that you kind of understand what's going on and can begin to, well, maybe not take control, but just to understand that you do have the ability to shift the way that you think about things. So just in summary here, our nervous system really is like this surveillance system and communication center. It's the ADT, of the body, and it's on duty all the time. Not only is it bringing in all of these external signals from our environment, it is also listening to what's going on inside our bodies, that we just ate something and the livers, if you were on my last challenge that I did when was it? April, May, March. It was in March. The herbally inspired spring kitchen. We were talking about the digestive system, all this other stuff that's going on inside. Your nervous system has an internal system as well. So it has to pay attention to everything, and it filters a lot of the irrelevant things out. So can you make some of these things? Can you start to perceive things as irrelevant so you don't have to worry about it anymore? Yeah, you could. Because information overload and this feeling, this lack of safety, it makes our system just have to work harder. There's just more to filter out, right? And one of the most important things that I wanted to share with you, and I'm not going to, usually I get into this more in my longer programs that I do. When you are on high alert, so when you're in this fight or flight modality, what happens is other systems in your body are literally shut down. Digestion. Obviously, your circulatory system still needs to pump blood. In fact, that gets sped up. Certain systems get sped up. Your sensory input gets sped up. You're detecting things like if there was actually an emergency, you get the tunnel vision. Your muscles get a lot more blood pumping to them, so they're ready to respond. But your digestive system gets completely shut down. Your reproductive system completely shut down. If you've ever known anyone that lives in a high level of stress, and they want to try to have a child and they're unable to get pregnant, it might just be by reducing the stress that can help an awful lot, because it's not that important to reproduce. It's not that important to digest your food. And it's certainly not that important. Your immune system is another one that gets shut down. It's not that important to fight off that cold virus if you're just about to get killed by a volcano or whatever might be happening in your environment. So these systems get shut down. And so if we're at a level of chronic stress, it's no wonder we all have indigestion or we getting sick all the time, because our other systems do not take priority over the fight or flight response. So yet another reason why it's so important to be able to put ourselves into a state of relaxation. All right. So yesterday we talked about what is coming into your senses, and gave a bunch of examples like loud noises or foul smells or just people complaining all of the time about stuff. But the thing is, you can also look at these things that are coming into your world as a more positive type of stressor, right? So the barking dog, is it a lovable barking dog or is it a scary barking dog? The temperature, is temperature a stressor? For me, when it's warm, I think it's great. Other people are stressed when it's warm, right? Bright lights that are overstimulating you. But what if they were like celebratory lights at the holidays, right? And what about the scent of, some people can't stand the smell of strong perfumes, but what if it was the smell of your lover that was wearing their favorite that you love? So you can begin to see how your perception and your perspective of these things can shift to a more positive point of view. Now, that's what I wanted to share with you. And next, I'm going to get into the plants that can help you really let go a lot of our overthinking that we get into. And this is a group of plants called the nerve sedatives. But what I want to share with you next is, so we've got all these perceptions and these perspectives and beliefs because of how we've lived our life and our experiences we've had. So one of the really important things that I do when I'm working with people in flower essence consultations is I have them go back and create a timeline of significant events where sometimes we kind of get stuck in that stress response. And so today, your deep work is called How Did I Get Here? And it's about creating a timeline and just going back through sort of I think I can't remember if I have it like the first 5 years, the second 5 years, and then decades kind of after that. And remember that significant things that create an imprint on our body don't have to necessarily be bad. They can be a good type of stressor as well. So then if you would like to be entered into the prize drawing, you can share one of these beliefs or patterns or something that you became aware of that's still affecting your wellness today. So make sure that you go to share that in put my fancy banner here, cultivatedlife.community. That is the place where you can share that to be entered to win a prize. And it's also in the emails that I've sent out for this particular event. So without any further ado, let's get into the awesome plants that we all love so much. Oops. Okay. So the question is, are you actually sleeping? When we're talking about our overthinking, our thoughts running, and all of those things, we are not going to sleep very well. And in fact, Linda had commented yesterday in the Cultivated Life community about no, it wasn't Linda, it was Deb, and was saying, yeah, I don't sleep very well. So let's talk about some of these more heavy duty kind of nerve sedatives that can really, really help to relax the nervous system. They can reduce pain, ease tension, and encourage sleep. So they're both soothing and nourishing to these peripheral nerves, which are the ones that are coming off of the spinal cord. So we have our brain, our spinal cord, that's called the central nervous system, and everything else is part of the peripheral nervous system. And I not getting into all the like anatomy and function and things like that, although I love it. I think it's very cool. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a number of herbs that are starting with super mild and then moving up to some kind of heavy duty ones that you would probably want, you would only want to take, like you wouldn't be driving if you were taking these particular herbs. So let me see. What is my first one here? Okay. The live stream software complained because I had too big of a file. So I want to start out with the first one, which is going to be chamomile. And chamomile, we talked about yesterday. It's having a return encore appearance from yesterday, but I didn't ever show you the actual chamomile plant. You can see how it grows with the little daisy-like flowers, and then what happens is the center part, we're used to seeing it like that, but the little white flowers are kind of dried up around the edges. And one of the best ways to use chamomile, we talked about yesterday, was in a tea. But for a more quick hit and way to get more effective, I actually like to just use the chamomile essential oil. Again, yesterday I talked about essential oils and how some of them are from more pretty, they have a high impact on the type of plant. And so you want to make sure that the essential oils you're buying are from plants that are being cultivated and specifically for that. So chamomile essential oil, this is I don't know if this is Roman or German. So the German chamomile and Roman chamomile, there's two different kinds. But that's one of my favorite ways to use this. And this is the mildest. So we're going to start with the mildest. Again, it's safe for kids. It's safe for, we talked yesterday about Peter Rabbit, safe for Peter Rabbit even to have a cup of chamomile tea. All right. The next one is passion flower. And passion flower is called this because of this incredible flower. I mean, this doesn't even look real. And it's got a cross symbol in the middle, which I believe is why it's called the passion flower, as in the passion of Christ. And the passion flower is a vine. And I actually have brought passion flower to visit today. And I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it because of the lighting in here. But I have this huge passion flower plant here that I bought last year, and I brought it in for the winter, and it grows as a vine, and it started growing up all onto one of the neighboring plants. So I had to detach it, but it's down here to visit as our mascot. And you can see it's got its little tendrils here. So I believe that it would be hardy in like a zone 8 or something like that. If you lived in Florida, you could definitely grow passion flower year round outside. You wouldn't have to worry about it. And maybe even someplace more like maybe someplace like Texas, but it's somewhat tropical, so it needs a pretty wet area. But the passion flower is another relatively gentle type of nerve sedative, but it's specifically for people who cannot stop thinking at night. It really just like helps just ease the thoughts. Today we're on head day, and we're talking about easing our thoughts and being able to fall asleep. And so if you're the kind of person that's like constantly planning, this is happening. I think I'm going to start taking passion flower at night. I tend to get in bed and think about all the things I'm going to do tomorrow and everything I did today. And so it's really a great one for that. So passion flower is an awesome one. And the next one, which I don't have a picture for in the presentation, is linden. And linden is a type of a tree. Sometimes it's Tilia is the name of it, but it's also, this is some that I've had for a year or more. It has these really interesting types of flowers. Let's see if I can get you in a good spot for that. And so it's got the flower, and then it has this kind of bract. These are kind of chewed up because they've been in a container. And so you would harvest the entire piece. And it's really, The word I always think of for that is soporific, which I also got from Beatrix Potter, one of her tales about Mr. McGregor and the bunnies eating too much lettuce. And so it just makes you sleepy, and it's very relaxing. And so one of the great ways to brew linden is a tea, and then you want to let it sit like overnight if you can, and really, really let it soak in there. So linden flower tea. And one of the things, so on these slides, it says what it is, and then it says which part of the plant. That's what that means over there. And so linden is another great one. It's in Europe. It's called lime tree, I believe. I don't know if that has, it must have to do with the color of the leaves and stuff. Now, valerian. Most of you have probably heard of valerian. And I happen to have some here because I have some growing in an area where some poison ivy has started coming in. And valerian, you use the root. It gets very tall. It has these beautiful white flowers on it. And so you, the valerian root, this is dripping all over my stuff, is just these, they're not really super thick. It's not a big tap root, but it is just kind of a cluster of roots. And so I'm going to replant these in another area when I'm done here with this. And one of these things about valerian is it's doesn't taste really good. It kind of, people liken it to the taste of dirty socks. So if you're one of these people that's really sensitive to taste, I recently saw a presentation by an herbalist that was talking about the different dosha types in Ayurvedic, if you're familiar with that, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And basically she was talking about the Kapha type, and just, if you're not sure what that is, you can look it up, but which is like the real more sedentary type for whom food is very important. And she was saying, if it doesn't taste good, the Kapha people are not going to take it. So if you're a Kapha type, you're probably not going to like valerian, but it is very effective in most people, although it can cause a stimulation in some people. So it's one of those things you want to test out before. You don't want to take it the night before you got a big presentation and expecting it to work. So we're getting a little bit stronger in the actions of these herbs now with valerian. It's a little bit more potent. And we're getting to the point where we might not actually want to use some of these with kids. California poppy, we all seen the Wizard of Oz where they fall asleep in the poppy field. So poppies are have a sedative and calming, calming. They're also recommended that you don't drive. And this is more for people who wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep. And it's kind of like a sleep modulator. So it's can also be effective for people who sleep too deeply. So it's kind of balancing out your level of sleep. Now, it does have some drug interactions. So if you're taking certain types of prescription medications, you just want to make sure that California poppy is not going to react with that. The next one is skullcap. And skullcap is kind of a new herb in my world. I haven't used it a lot. And I'm very excited because this year I'm actually growing. I got some little baby skull caps. There are multiple different types of skull cap. This one is actually the Baikal skull cap. This isn't necessarily the one you use for sleep, but most skull cap, you can just purchase this in commerce, and it just comes as like I'm not used to doing the camera this way, as just like a cut up herb like that. And you can either make it into a tincture, or you can put some in a tea. Now, another way that some people like to use skullcap and some of these other relaxing herbs is in a herbal smoke blend. So if you're the type that likes to smoke, and you can take a blend of relaxing herbs, and you can put mullein in there. That's good for the lungs. Skullcap, Damiana is another one that people will sometimes add in as well. And just use that as a smoke before bed. I'm not much of a smoker. I don't really necessarily recommend it, but if that's your style, then by all means you should use it, because what you want to do is pick a modality that you like and you know that you are going to use. And the last one that I want to share with you is, again, another plant that I really haven't used that much, but it's kava kava. And this is a pretty heavy duty herb. This is considered on, let me see here. There was like a scale of 1 to 10 that I was looking at, and this was like an 8 or 9. Do not drive when you're on kava. And it's really important that if you decide you really, like, if you are really tense, really anxious, you're not sleeping at all, it's bad, then kava is a good one for you. My understanding is that it's not necessarily something you want to use as a tonic, like long-term use, but to maybe kind of get rid of some tension initially, kava is a good one to start with. Now, it's really important that the kava that you're getting, because it's kind of one of these like celebrity herbs, what happens is people want to make money off of it. And so you have to be very careful that you're only getting kava. Make sure you're getting it from a reputable company, and you're only getting the kava that's made from the roots only. You don't want the foliar part in made. So if it doesn't specifically say kava root, then don't purchase that. Now, you could buy the roots, and anyone that's been in my programs know that I love to teach people how to make their own herbal products, because for this exact reason. I don't know what that kava is that I'm buying here, and I know I want the roots only. And so you could buy the roots from, again, a reputable source, such as Mountain Rose Herbs is always a reliable place to go to. Frontier Herbs is another great place as well. And there's a lot of small shops around. Do you have a shop close to you? It's very nice to have a local herb shop, but not everybody does. But anyway, so you just want to make sure you get in a good quality product. So one other cute thing that I want to share with you is an idea that's especially good for children of all ages. And that's the idea of making an herbal dream pillow. Now, you don't have to be a, master seamstress or seam or tailor to make a pillow. You can simply purchase a little sachet bag and put some herbs into that. You can fill your dream pillows with relaxing herbs such as lavender. I've got chamomile on here. And then over on the right side, that's hops. Hops is another one as well. And see, these have potent scents to them. So they make more sense to put into a pillow that you're going to be using physically like that, because now you're going to be smelling these, and the scent and the calming effect of them will be working on you all night long as you are sleeping. Some people will put things in it like mugwort, which is more for dream enhancement, and there are other herbs that you could put in for other purposes. But if you're mostly interested in getting better sleep and nervous system relaxation, then these three are a great combination. Some other combinations could be, you could also use peppermint. That's another calming and also very it's calming and stimulating at the same time. Peppermints are kind of funny like that, but it also peppermint can help to enhance your dreams as well. And then eucalyptus, rosemary, and lemon balm is a good combination for if you're feeling ill and you're having some sort of respiratory breathing, you want to like help yourself as you're sleeping at night. So you can add the essential oils, but you don't want to you could just put the essential oils on a cloth. But when you have something like the lavender flowers or the chamomile flowers, they're going to soak in the essential oils. So that's a really nice way to create the pillow. So those are the main things that I wanted to share with you tonight. Thank you so much for joining me here. And tomorrow is going to be our last day for the 3-day masterclass. In the past, I've done this 5 days, but I know that a lot of people don't really have time to do a 5-day masterclass. So I feel like I'm kind of rushing through stuff, and I'm actually think what I'm going to do is do an extra session, not this week, next week. So if you're on the email list or if you're in the Cultivated Life community, then just keep an eye out for that. I'm going to do an extra session with some other kind of what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to do a plant journey, a relaxing plant journey where you can, it's like a visualization, and it's something that I really like. So before we go, I want to leave you with this thought. It's cute. Rule number 1 is don't sweat the small stuff. And rule number 2 is it's all small stuff. And you might be saying, well, yes, that's mostly true. People do, and I don't mean to just poo-poo actual trauma that people have. And trauma is when our nervous system gets stuck due to some sort of very severe event that has happened. But we also, those events can sometimes have affected us in a way that's permanent, even though it was just something mean that somebody said. So examining this, Sarah's putting worrying is my sticking point. Worry is what is so difficult for her, I'm assuming you're talking about going to sleep. And so when we can start to kind of, first of all, get the physical feeling of calm into our body using these nervine herbs, that lets us get out of our fear mode, which is basically what worry is, and start to see things a little bit differently. So this is the beautiful thing about herbs. I love them so much. They are here to help us. They are such beautiful helpers. So one thing you can do is even just go out and cut yourself a bouquet of flowers, bring them in, and beautify your environment. Right there, you're changing your environment into something of beauty, and that's going to help you right there. The plants are here to help us. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. We'll have one more masterclass session tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, head on over to the cultivatedlife.community if you're not already there. You need to, if you're not in the community already, when you get there, you have to make an account, and then you go to the Mayday Masterclass. On the left-hand side, there's like a whole list of different things. Go in there and you can download the deep work for today, which is doing a timeline of significant events and starting to just become aware of maybe physical issues that you have and relating them to a timeline event, something that happened that maybe you didn't connect the two before. It's super, super helpful. And anyway, have a great night, everyone. And I will be over in the community. I'll be posting the replay there. Thanks, everybody, for joining me tonight. Take care.